So we left off with the question, what's the fundamental difference between sales and gifts on one hand and inheritance on the other hand? Because we're trying to understand the depth of our relationship with the land of Israel, and the way we're going to get to that is to appreciate the depth of our relationship with Hashem, because the two go hand in hand. And while the parasha here talks about dividing up the land of Israel, on further investigation, you actually discover that there are three facets to it. There's a rational approach, work out which tribe is bigger and give them a bigger piece of land. There's a super rational approach, which is within each of those portions, you have a lottery that decides which family gets which part. And then there's an intrinsic relationship, which is the fact that we are the heirs to the land of Israel because of Hashem's promise to our forefathers. So we wanted to link those three components to the three ways in which you can make a transaction. So the first way you make a transaction is you purchase something. So that means the buyer gives something of value, usually money, and in return for that, they receive something in return, the object that they're looking to buy. So that's a rational process. That associates with what we call chelkeinu. This is our portion. Why is it our portion? Because we invested in it. We did something to earn it. So that's like saying, well, this tribe deserves a bigger piece of land because they have more people. It's rational. The second option is a gift. The nature of a gift is it's got nothing, well, almost nothing to do with the recipient. The fact is, I'm feeling generous. I want to give a gift. The fact that I chose you to get the gift, well, that implies that there's obviously a connection between us. There must be some kind of a relationship. So that is not, it's out of the hands of the recipient, but it has a rational basis as well. And inheritance is beyond the person's decision. Because as far as the Torah is concerned, we'll see in this week's parasha, the nature of inheritance is, that's how it works. Hashem mandated that these family members get these pieces of the estate. And it's not necessarily something which is rational. So, in the case of a transaction that involves money, purchase, it's very obvious what happens. Things change hands. That's the expression we use. So, the money goes from the purchaser to the seller, and the item goes from the seller to the purchaser. So that's very obvious. And the two don't have to have any meaningful relationship. It's just willing buyer, willing seller. That's it. You don't have to know each other.
The word contract doesn't come in.
Well, you don't have to have a contract in order to make a sale. It could literally be a momentary engagement. You're driving down the street, there's a vendor on the side of the road, he's selling something that you'd like, you stick your hand out the window, you give him the cash, he gives you the item, and off you go. You don't know his name, you don't know the nature of his business, you don't know if the goods are legal.
That's what I'm saying. You get handed over, but you haven't. Some can come to you after and say, "How did you acquire this? How can you prove that this is legally yours?"
Fine, okay. So that's an interesting question in its own right. And what do we say? The cliche is possession is 9/10 of the law. So if it's an object that can be passed from hand to hand, then the fact that you have it in your hand is already an indicator that it probably belongs to you. If somebody wants to make a claim against you, they'd have to have compelling evidence. But the fact that you have it in your hand, that indicates that in all likelihood, 90% of the time, it's because you deserve to have it in your hand. A gift is also a transfer from one person to the other, even though it doesn't have a two-way transfer. So it's not that the recipient is giving something, fine, but the fact is that the giver of the gift is still taking an item from their possession and giving it to somebody else who is separate from them. It just so happens that the way that they're giving it is as a gift, and the likelihood is that there's some degree of relationship between them, unlike in a sale where that's not a prerequisite. Inheritance does not work that way, for a very simple reason. At the time the inheritance happens, the giver cannot give it, by definition. Because inheritance implies that the giver is no longer alive. So if the giver is no longer alive, it's illogical to say he is giving an item to another person. How can a person give something if they're not there? So how does inheritance work? How is it that you have an object, an estate, a property that used to belong to so-and-so and now belongs to their heir? And the answer is that inheritance works in almost the exact opposite way of how any other transaction works. Because the nature of every ordinary transaction is the people are separate and the object moves between them. The nature of inheritance is the object doesn't move, the people merge. In other words, and you'll see it in this week's parasha because the language in the parasha tells us this principle, the nature of inheritance is that the heir now steps into the place of the original person. It's not that the object now goes to the heir. The heir replaces the person who originally owned this object. That's the nature of inheritance. And therefore the Torah uses the expression, Yakum al Shem Achiv, that it's not in this parish, but in other contexts, that it's basically the idea that somebody takes over the title that used to belong to somebody else. So they used to have the title of owner, and you now take over the title of owner. And the property could stay put for the rest of the perpetuity. It doesn't have to move. But the fact that there's an inheritance means that the heir has such a deep relationship with the original owner that in the absence of the original owner, they just naturally slip into that position. It's very different. It's not arbitrary. It's at the core. It's kind of the deepest part of who we are. It's essentially the DNA of the person. That's typically why the person is the heir, because they are made of the same biological material as the person who was the original owner, the parent, in a typical case, and therefore they just naturally assume their position. So to be clear, in the case of sales or gifts, the item moves from person A to person B. In the case of inheritance, the person moves to become the replacement of person A. Very different. So with that in mind, we can have a look at these three different expressions that we use in terms of our relationship with the land of Israel and our relationship with Hashem. So with regards to the land of Israel, we know that there's a component of the land where it becomes ours following a rational process. That is similar to the sale. Just like a sale makes sense, you paid, therefore you get it. So in the same way, you have a big tribe, so you deserve a big piece of land. There is an element of our relationship with the land of Israel that is Hashem's gift to us, that doesn't have anything to do with what we have done, and that is like the lottery. The lottery is Hashem set up a system which basically says this section of the land is going to go to that family. And it's not because that family tried harder or davened more or did more mitzvahs. It's a lottery. It's completely on Hashem's terms. So that's like the gift. And then beneath all of that, at the core of our relationship with the land of Israel, is the fact that because Hashem had promised the land to our forefathers, and that's why we call them our forefathers, to emphasize the nature of an inheritance relationship. Because Hashem promised the land to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and we are their descendants, then it's natural that we step into their shoes and we become the owners of the land of Israel in their absence. And that doesn't require anything. It doesn't require division. It doesn't even require a lottery. It's just an automatic, intrinsic kind of connection. So we want to use that as a way to understand our relationship with Hashem. So as mentioned last time, in our davening, in the preamble to the davening in Shachris, we say, Ashreinu ma toiv chelkeinu, how good is our portion, ma noim geir aleinu, and how pleasant is our lot, ma yafa yerushaseinu, and how beautiful is our inheritance. So those three concepts, our portion, our lot, and our inheritance, they essentially describe three layers of our relationship with Hashem. The first layer is our portion, which, as we've already identified, a portion associates with the concept of a sale, meaning you have paid the appropriate amount of money to deserve this item. So let's try and translate that into our relationship with Hashem. How do you pay Hashem? You do mitzvahs. So chelkeinu, our portion, and that's why it's personalized. Ours. Chelkeinu, our portion. That notion, that idea of having a portion, of having the rights to something, that effectively describes our relationship with Hashem through our investment. In the same way as if a person is buying something, they invest a certain amount of money, and for that they get the asset. So in the same way, we're investing a certain amount of dedication by doing mitzvahs and by studying Torah and by davening, etc. And as a result of that, we deserve a relationship with Hashem. Now, the truth of the matter is that to a greater or lesser extent, that could exist even before the Torah was given. when the Torah was given, there was a very specific program that we had to follow in order to create this chedek, in order to have this portion. But even before the Torah was given, there were still certain mitzvahs that applied. For example, there were the 7 Noachad laws. Abraham was told that he and his descendants had to have a bris. There were various instructions that were time specific. In this particular time they had to go there, do that, bring this offering, etc., etc. So there was this, and this, by the way, comes to a contract. There was almost like this contract between Hashem and the Jewish people. If you do X and Y, and not only the Jewish people, that was a contract that existed then and exists still today with all people. You do these various things, that's going to create a relationship between us, and based on that relationship, you're going to get something in return. So for us as Jewish people, Chelkeinu, our portion, our ability to have a relationship with Hashem and to be able to get from Hashem because of that relationship, that predates the giving of the Torah. It's just that it wasn't as fully developed at that point as it is now with the giving of the Torah. The next level is even more intriguing. Goyra leinu, our lot, which you could, in a certain sense, almost say as our good fortune. Because that's what happens. A person wins the lottery. You'd say, well, that was good mazel. That was their good fortune. There isn't a rational reason why they won the lottery. It's fortune. So we have a relationship with Hashem, which is our good fortune. What do we mean by that? This must describe a level of our relationship with Hashem which is not something we created, but rather it's something that Hashem made. So similar to the gift, right? What's the nature of the gift? The person who's giving the gift chose to share this gift with somebody else. And although there might be some level of relationship already between them, and it might be because the person who's receiving the gift did something that made you feel that you like them, and therefore you want to give them a gift, but fundamentally you give the gift because you're giving the gift. It's your thing.
You don't buy a ticket. You're not in the lottery.
That's true. That's the lottery we have.
Jewish, you didn't get this portion.
Correct. But let's go back a step. The lottery that we know is a lottery where you have to go buy a ticket. The lottery that's being described in the Torah about how each portion of land is given to a family, there's nothing they had to do.
You had to be Jewish.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to get there.
They not have to believe.
No, there's no prerequisite. All Hashem said is write everybody's names down, put them into a hat or whatever they used, and write every portion of land down, put that into another hat, and you pull the two out and you marry them. But there was nothing that you could do. Now, here's the interesting thing. To become Jewish. How did we become Jewish?
That's what I thought you were talking about.
Right? So I'm saying, how did we become Jewish?
We were born.
Did Hashem say, okay, we're looking for volunteers. I've got this program. It's, would you like the good news or the bad news, right? What's that story where Moshe comes down and he says, the good news is I managed to negotiate him down to 10. The bad news is adultery is still in. So, the good news about it, there was no canvassing for people to become the Jewish people. It's not like Hashem said, I'm going to put you through a series of tests, and whoever passes those tests, that's who's going to be Jewish. Hashem arbitrarily chose that he wants us to be his people. Now, before the Torah was given, we have a line, it's actually used on 2 different occasions, but we have a line that really illustrates this point. Just imagine for a moment, and because we're so used to the story and we read the story so often and it's so much part of our heritage, we don't necessarily stop to think about what the story looked like from the other side. So think for a moment. Here's Pharaoh sitting on his throne. And he's running a very advanced civilization. In those days, it was way more advanced than anybody else. And as we know, there's certain elements of Egyptian civilization that even till today, we don't really understand how they did what they did. So it's a very advanced civilization, a powerful country. He's got hundreds of thousands of slaves, not only Jewish slaves, working in his country, keeping the economy going. They even look at him as if he's a deity. He's living with this God complex. And one day, Moshe arrives at his door. And Pharaoh hasn't seen Moshe for decades. Literally decades. Because remember, he grew up in his house. And then he had to run away after that story where he killed the Egyptian. He hasn't seen him for decades. Possibly 50 plus years. Now, Moshe arrives one day and he says, listen here. This is all about to change. And let my people go. and he's probably thinking, who are your people? Where have you been all this time? By what virtue are they your people? Because when you were 2 years old, you were adopted by the royal palace. Like, how are these your people? And then Moshe says to him, you have to understand that those people who effectively are all but completely assimilated into your society, Hashem has chosen them as a special group. Can you imagine what this must have sounded like to Pharaoh? And part of his argument, Moshe is told by Hashem to tell Paroi, you have to tell him, Beni Bechori Yisrael. This is the line, that the Jewish people are my firstborn son. Does somebody choose to be the son of their parent? I know there are people who have this very romantic view of the world, and they say that before your neshama came into the world, you chose your family. You ever heard people say this? You chose your family. I have a long-standing challenge to say, can anybody show that in an actual source, in some Torah book? I've heard it so many times from people. I've never seen it in any real authentic source. You don't choose. You don't choose who you get born into. Beni Bechori Yisrael, basically what Hashem is telling Moshe to tell the Jewish people and to tell Paroi, something's changed over here. This is no longer the way that history has behaved up until now, which is that there are individuals who, through their dedication, forge a relationship with Hashem. That's how it was till now. So Avraham had tremendous sacrifice, so therefore Hashem had a deep relationship with Avraham. And Yitzchak had tremendous sacrifice, so he had a relationship with Hashem. But at the same time, Yishmael did not, so he fell off the bandwagon. That's how it used to work up until now. Now Hashem's saying, no, this is like your goral, this is your fortune. This is not something of your making. You are my child. In fact, there's even the pasuk, the verse in Tehillim that says, "Ani hayom yelidaticha." Today I gave birth to you. Meaning to say, like, there's a moment where you become that child. That's a much, much deeper kind of a relationship, because essentially what that means is that relationship is not of our making, and therefore it's not a relationship that we can undo. If you're talking about a chelkeinu relationship, which is based on how much I invest in my relationship with Hashem, then at any time Hashem could say, you haven't invested, we're out of here. But the moment Hashem says, you are my children, you can't unchildren them. That's who you are. This is now your DNA. This is the core identity of your being. You're Hashem's child. So that is Goyra Aleinu. That is our portion. That's a much deeper relationship between us and Hashem. That relationship, as we see, that relationship existed already before the Torah was given. In other words, Hashem has made this investment in us even before He's given us His Torah. That means that as deep as that relationship is, there must be something even deeper that occurs when Hashem gives us the Torah. So what's the difference between the message that Moshe has to give Paroi and the message that Hashem gives Moshe before the Torah is given? So the message of Paroi is, they're my children. The message at the foot of Sinai is, they are the chosen nation. What's the difference between being Hashem's child and being the chosen nation? So the answer is, just like a child doesn't choose their parent, the parent also doesn't choose their child. You know, you say a big mazel tov when the baby's born, and then 18 years later you find out what you got. When you choose something, that means that you've dug very deep to work out what you're all about. And based on what you're all about, that defines what you choose. Meaning this: most of the choices that we make in life are not true choices. Most of the choices that we make in life are influenced by circumstance. For example, you get up this morning, you decide what you're going to wear. You're not going to put on your summer outfit if it's freezing cold outside. So it's no longer a choice. The whole element of the choice has been removed. Could also be that you had to get dressed in the dark because you don't want to wake anybody up. So now your choice is limited to what you can identify in the dark. And maybe it's not what you wanted to wear today, but you couldn't find what you wanted to wear because it was dark. So there went the choice. Could be that today you wanted to get dressed casual, but you've got a very important business meeting. So now you don't have a choice. You have to wear smart. So most of the choices that we have in our lives are not true choices. There are very few things that are absolute choice, or what we call free choice. Free choice means free from external influence. Those choices that we make as free choices are where we have to dig very deep and identify who I am, what I'm all about, and based on that I'm going to make that choice. At the foot of Mount Sinai, Hashem says, the reason that I have the Jewish people as my people is not because of what they've done. That would be an external reason. That would mean that we don't have a deep inherent relationship, we just have a transactional relationship. You do things for me, and I'll do things for you. Hashem says, no, that's not what kind of a relationship we have. It's not just chelkeinu. Then you'd say, well, the relationship that we have is, we're family. You're my children. And that is a very profound level of relationship. Goyr aleinu. Even when you don't behave like you should, you're still my family. Hashem says, actually, the relationship is much deeper than that. Yerush Aseinu. It's like inheritance. Inheritance means who you are is linked to the core of who I am. Therefore, if I'm not here, you become that person in my place. That is similar to a true choice. A true choice is, I choose you, not because of you, but because of me. Because the essence of who I am is now reflected and being shared with you. And that's really the deepest level of relationship that Hashem wants to illustrate with us. He wants us to know that our relationship with Him, our connection with Him, is not just a love relationship like a family, but it's a core relationship. It's everything that Hashem is about invested in this choice of the Jewish nation. And that reflects both in His relationship with us. He'll never swap us for another nation, because once you've made the choice is you. It's not just what you've chosen, it is you. You can't change you. You can't change this relationship. And the same applies to the land. The land is not just something that is divvied up because we have a certain amount of people and we have to put them into this geographical location. It's not only because Hashem has given us a gift, it's because there's an inherent relationship between us and this land that can never be broken. And that's really the message of this parasha, that our relationship with Israel is a result of our relationship with Hashem. Both of them are actually in our bones and can never be weakened. We have to remember that at all times, regardless of what we do, regardless of where we are, regardless of how we behave.